Welcome to Real Feels, the podcast that invites people to be public with their private persona. In a world where we are constantly redefining what it means to be a man, I'd like to take some time to find out who we are, who we aim to be, and the space in between. I'm your host, Brad Gage. Like the women in her documentaries, director Sarah Moshman is on a mission. Her work is centered firmly around female empowerment, not just because she recognizes the injustices around her, but also to give her daughter a future with equity, integrity, and real possibility. Sarah's ability to turn her message into a career makes her one of my personal role models, and her passion for communicating the female experience is infectious, as you'll hear during the chat. Sarah and I talk about the tough gender subjects, sexual assault, conditioning, and how to talk to our future kids about sex. I'm so grateful she took some time to be here with me right now. I like to start with just the simplest question. How are you doing right now?
I love this because I was sitting in a meditation like a week ago at the Jane Club. The Jane Club. It's a very cool co-working space that's like women focused.
Sure.
Not only women can go there, but the meditation teacher said, "Who am I sitting with today?" And I loved that. It wasn't just what's your name and what do you do? It was like, what are you bringing today to this room, to this space? And I love that.
Because it's like
every day is
different.
And
what you do can sometimes be the furthest thing from who you are.
Exactly. I'm feeling like we ask each other, "Oh, what do you do?" as if that defines all of us all the time. And for me, it kind of does, but for most people, it doesn't. And then they immediately feel inadequate when you ask
embarrassed,
them, "What do you do?"
hesitant,
it's
like, no, you have done a beautiful job of creating the life of your dreams, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
As an outsider, having talked to you, having known you for so long.
We went to college together.
We did. We went to college together and worked in film school.
Grew up in the Midwest.
Yes. And then, but also seeing and just talking to you recently about all of your work and how in alignment that is. Good job. And you're inspiring me.
Thank you.
So, but answer the question.
Okay, here we go.
Who the fuck am I talking with right now?
Who am I sitting with? It's been a weird start to this year, 2020. I think for so many of us, but for me, finishing a film is equal parts exciting and also sad because you're no longer making the film. And I just finished my documentary, Nevertheless, which I know we'll talk about.
No, we're not going to talk about it.
No, okay, well, we'll just skip it.
I don't have two note cards in front of me with questions about it.
Yeah, because I really enjoyed the making of the thing. Like, to me, that's the real gift, is the making of it, especially this is my third time around with a feature. So I used to be so focused on the outcome and the success of it all. I'm making air quotes. What awards is it going to win? How much money is it going to make? Who's going to watch it? And this time, I think I really had my head on straight more than ever of like the making of it is the gift. Like I love directing so much because directing to me in documentary means from A all the way to Z, like from the idea all the way through to the distribution and who's going to watch it and how people are being impacted. So there is a sadness that comes with the not making of anymore. And suddenly your baby, your project is like out in the world doing what it needs to do. And it might not look exactly like you thought. So that's been, a transition that I think every day I'm sort of just finding my way in this new phase, which is distribution and how are we going to get it out to the world and who's going to watch it and how are people going to feel about it. And then, of course, with everything going on with the coronavirus, like events of mine are getting canceled or pushed or moved, and I'm getting like film festival rejections every day. And those pretty much roll off my back at this point, but it still hurts, it still is like, well, why not? Especially women's film festivals. You're just like, yeah?
Women's, okay.
Oh, Brad.
Well, let's talk about Nevertheless, because this is top of mind with you, top of mind with me. I just watched it.
You just watched it. Which not that many people have seen it, so that's exciting.
Yeah, and so, this is sneak preview, digging in. You want to just give us the pitch of what it is?
Yeah,
people, is there even a trailer out now?
There is, there's a trailer on Vimeo and YouTube. Nevertheless is really about looking behind the headlines of the Me Too movement, and it follows the stories of 7 individual men and women who have experienced sexual harassment or assault in the workplace or school context. And then it also really takes it a 30,000 foot view of our society and how we got here as a culture and where we're hopefully going. So what that means is we talk about toxic masculinity, we talk about how we socialize our kids, we talk about the legal system and intersectionality and race and privilege. And all of that somehow is wrapped up in 80 minutes. It sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's also very empowering and uplifting. I wouldn't be me without making a film that has like kind of a happy ending, like a hopeful tone.
Yeah.
So
there's some wins in the movie.
It's
not all,
it's serious, it's intense. It's people have described it as like they felt outraged, but they also felt hope. And that's like kind of exactly what I wanted people to feel. Yeah. And I've been working on it for the last like 2.5 years.
And I mean, I do think it is dense with information, but also takeaways. And for me, what was so lovely is it's just like, it's 80 minutes. There's a lot of stories in there. So you can find a connection with any of the stuff, especially I think very smartly and beautifully having the story of a naval man, a guy who was in the Navy.
A male survivor.
And was a male survivor of rape.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you do it so well. You have so many experts, men and women, famous people. It really is, to me, and I mean the outrage comes from it, exposure. You are providing a little tiny bite of something. Somebody can sit down for an hour and a half and be exposed to the stories that will allow them to possibly change the way they interact with the world.
Thank you.
Which is what you hope for a movie to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Now you just got to get
a
people to see
tall order.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would have been missing something without a male survivor. I really was hoping to find someone like Heath. His name's Heath Phillips, and his whole dream was to be in the Navy like his entire life, like his father and his grandfather, and all of that was shattered within the first day.
The first day
of joining the Navy,
he hung out with some guys and they got drunk and raped him, and that is how he started his dream. And it's just and how
and
prevalent.
17
years old, and how it's like that story for a guy. Men can probably empathize with that. It's like, man, is that crazy? It's like, okay, but that's happening all the time with women. Right. And so it is like...
At varying degrees.
To varying degrees, yes, of course. And I'm sure this is something you run into too. The balance between specifics and generalizations.
Yeah,
right?
or just that I don't want someone to watch any film about sexual assault, sexual harassment and think, oh, my story's not as bad, so I have no right to complain. And that's a lot of what you hear. And I find myself saying that too. It's like, well, Heath's story is like, whoa.
Yeah,
but it's like
a competition.
So, like,
right.
It's all on the spectrum of the same problem.
Yeah.
So that's the trap I tried to not fall into, and by including stories in the film that are way different than Heath's story, like hostile work environment, gender discrimination, like much smaller offenses, maybe not even physical at all, that are, truly equal in weight when we think about our society as a whole. Yeah. So,
I mean, it is that jumping that fence that blocks the evil monster archetype that's now been created. The like truly bad guy who's like, who's the stranger or something. He's salacious in the shadows, or the guy who is slapping a butt in the workplace. Nobody saw. Yeah, there's nothing. There's just and they're the boss or whatever, and just there's nothing to be done. Yeah, and the spectrum really is in the film. I mean, just to run it down quickly, you have a police officer.
A 911 dispatcher.
A 911 dispatcher. Yeah. A writer's assistant on the TV show Friends. A tech entrepreneur that was dealing with a seed money investor who was being...
a lot of money on the line.
Exactly. Yeah. Just high stakes. The person who was funding her company.
And many others.
Yeah. To out him messes up a whole system.
Ecosystem.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure there. Yeah. There's a Ford auto worker. Incredible story. Not only that, and I mean, I'm sure you're just like, we're going to focus on the Ford stuff, but she opens up that interview saying that she was raped when she was in the military.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
Yeah, I wrestled with whether to include
can't catch a break.
It just felt like, is this too much? But it's the truth.
Right.
And it is. She comes back to say she had PTSD from the rape, and then the harassment at Ford just exacerbated that. And I think that's important, that when someone harasses you, it might be a small offense, but it could just pick at a wound that has been in their life forever. Like that's part of it too. It's like you don't know who you're dealing with on either side. I also think for the perpetrator, it's like hurt people. Yeah. I think about that all the time. Like you were saying, like the bad guys aren't like over there in the shadows, like all plotting their next mean move. Like we all think we're the good guy, right? We all think we're the hero of the story, especially men.
I heard that when the verdict came down for Harvey Weinstein, that he was guilty of 2 counts.
Yeah.
I heard that he turned to his lawyer and said, "But I'm innocent."
Really?
Yeah.
But
this is the thing, right? This is exactly
in
what we're
his
talking
mind.
About. He's not a bad guy. And it
was all consensual.
Right. And it is, I was just listening to an incredible podcast on the way here today with Rebecca Solnit, writer of Men Explain Things to Me, with Ezra Klein on the Vox. Shout out to the Vox podcast. This thing is insane. And she's just one of the smartest people I've ever heard speak.
Awesome.
But she talks about how, yes, so we're Me Too has recognized that this exists and men didn't know. Sure.
All right.
Sure. I'm going to say some didn't.
We'll go with that. Yeah.
Some didn't. But now it's about piling on when they see somebody who's bad.
Yeah.
Instead of recognizing it, seeing it, and diving deeper and going, okay, why is this person hurting people?
Yeah.
What happened? Why? Asking more questions and diving deeper into the root cause of all this stuff, because even while super important, calling people out and using the social justice when the actual, criminal justice system is not quite working systemically, that's important. But the next step of the evolution is looking at root causes and rehabilitation.
Right.
Which is so hard to do.
Harder, yeah.
Hard to do, because that involves forgiveness.
Slower work, yeah.
That involves forgiveness, understanding, empathy, then from women. Because men,
feminine qualities, stereotypically feminine qualities. Yes,
exactly. It's women empathizing with men who have perpetrated these things, which is the greatest show of strength you can have. Yeah. I feel like most people I know are not there, which is reasonable. Yeah. It's very early.
It's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
in the meantime, how do we live? Yeah. How do we work together? How do we, coexist in these spaces when older men specifically, I'll say, often say to me now, because of this work that I'm involved in, well, I can't even ride an elevator with a woman anymore because she might accuse me of sexual harassment. So I would like to know from you, Brad, what do I say to someone in that situation? Because to me, it just sort of makes my blood boil, because I feel like they're completely missing the point of the entire movement and making it about them. But it's also very interesting because maybe for the first time they've been in fear of, and women live with that fear every single day.
Right.
Like I often feel afraid walking down the street at any point, on an elevator, alone with a man, etc., ad nauseum. But I think that's just so fascinating to me that especially older men, even relatives of mine, have said that. Like, well, I can't go out to lunch with a woman alone anymore. And I'm like, who are you, Mike Pence? What's happening? Like, it's just, it's because, what do you say?
That's their defensive mechanism.
Yeah.
Where in a
I'll
way,
just remove myself from the situation.
And you know what's interesting? To me, in that conversation, the first question would be, why do you feel like you can't?
Right.
Because
it kind of implies victim blaming to me. Of
right.
that a woman
They're
would
gonna
lie.
Get you.
They would make it up. There's this undertone that women would say, like, hey, you made a pass at me in the elevator. Like that's just not true. So there's also that misperception that women are making this up. Like I feel like there's an undertone of that.
In the moment, talking to a person like this, I would say, why do you feel like that?
Yeah.
And then it would be, well, doesn't that sound a little ridiculous?
Yeah, because the result of that is that women are going to miss out on mentorship, on opportunity, on promotions, on raises, everything. And they already are. Yeah. Because men are saying, well, I can't be seen alone with a woman because someone might think that XYZ is happening. And that's really devastating part of the Me Too movement, is we think we're taking these steps forward, and we are, but we're also taking steps back. So it's a weird time. I think there's so much fallout from this that we will continue to unfold for years.
Yeah. It is baby steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've taken some real big steps lately. And then so it's like, it's going to be a couple smaller ones. And it is about not being afraid to have conversations like that with people.
Yeah.
And to me, it's a lot of like, if somebody were to say that, again, to get back to your question about how I deal with that, somebody asked me, I'd be like, be judging how much time I have, because it is about educating.
Yeah.
It's just about like, how do you feel in this situation? Do you know that women feel uncomfortable because the systems that we have in place right now are invisible to men and are so 3D
ever
to
present.
women.
Yeah.
And so men feeling uncomfortable at all is a fraction of a percent of the amount of uncomfortable feelings that women have to feel. And so even but the problem with that is even saying that to a guy doesn't make any sense.
Right. If you've never felt that way.
If you've never felt that way.
If you've always been treated a certain way, how do you know that it's wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my new way of approaching these situations, and I don't like that this is the way I would have to do it, but it is challenging men to be better, stronger, and smarter, more evolved. And it's not bullying, but it is, I say it more as challenging. And so it's like, if you can't handle being around a woman, you are weak. Using words like coward, using words like weak, using words because
that will sting.
That will sting.
The masculinity.
Because the pain is what changes men.
Interesting.
And there are so few words for men that affect them the way that calling a woman a bitch or a cunt or something does.
Yeah.
Other than calling them a sissy or
something feminine.
Something feminine.
Yeah.
But even then, they don't affect them because they're like, well, I'm not feminine. So, a lot of men it doesn't even affect them. So kind of attacking someone's inner strength, strength of character, moral strength, I think is the one way that I am moving forward, going to kind of attack that scenario.
Yeah, I like that because even Jackson Katz, who's in the film as one of our experts, this incredible speaker and activist and author. He's so great.
Thank you for introducing me.
Oh my God, right?
Holy
His
shit.
TEDx talk is so good. I just love how he talks about it as like, well, if you're not doing these things, then you're not being a good leader. And I just love that because all of us in positions of leadership want to be good at being a leader. And as we know across the board, men are more leaders than women. Unfortunately, in every industry, that's the case. And so I like this idea of even going to like a business school, going to a medical school, going to law schools, who are the future leaders of America in theory, and teaching this as leadership skills. Like if you're not on board with gender equality in terms of leadership, then you're not going to be a good leader.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful way to kind of attack this from all sides, is thinking about how we can redefine leadership and involving this as part of that dialogue when typically we might think of leadership as something else, something about being powerful or having control or not necessarily about inclusivity and diversity and, gender equity and bias.
Yes. Yeah. Diversity being this untapped resource of growth.
Yes.
Where people don't respect it. So many people in America don't respect diversity. That's the reason why we innovate.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like everybody being the same is not going to help us go anywhere. We're just going to keep reinforcing each other's ideas. So yeah. I mean, education, and you're doing it. This is part of what your work.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about what you do as a profession outside of directing films?
A lot of my work is in impact, speaking, teaching, and so the goal with a film like Nevertheless, as well as my other films, is really to spark dialogues, to make change, to get these conversations to happen in the workplace, in schools, so that documentaries, films can do what they're meant to do, which is to change the world, if used properly. In my opinion, I think documentaries are just like at their strongest when they're seen in a group, not just passively alone in your living room while you're on Facebook eating popcorn, but actually watching it and processing it and thinking about it and discussing it. So I've done this with another film, but I'm working with Indie Flicks for Nevertheless, a great distributor. And with their help, we're going to be screening Nevertheless exclusively in workplaces, schools, organizations, conferences. Really anyone that wants to host a screening can host a screening, whether it's for 2 people or 2 million people. Then the film can really be used based on that workplace culture. So if you are already super inclusive and you want to use the film to just reinforce what you're already doing, great. If you have a very toxic culture and we need to start at the bottom and it's baby steps, amazing. So if it's in a middle school where you want to talk about these themes before girls even face it, hopefully, and boys, then amazing. So it's just, the film is really meant to be stretched and utilized and picked apart and celebrated and whatever it needs to be for that school or organization. So it's really by design supposed to be a tool for growth and change. When I say we want managers to see it, leaders to see it, those happen to be mostly men as well. And those are the gatekeepers. Those are the change makers. Those are the people that can really enact policies to help.
Right.
So when I thought about what am I trying to do with this film, like how do I define success for Nevertheless, I think a lot of filmmakers get really trapped in the festival laurels and the awards and the Netflixes of it all. And that's cool. But for me, it's like, if I really want this film to make change, then it's got to be slower, deeper, harder work of going to a workplace and showing it to 20 people, and then hoping that they want to incorporate it within their culture. And that would be, I never thought this would be like my dream, but to like go to an HR conference and have 3,000 HR reps see it. And then for all of them to bring it into their workplaces, like that's change. Like that's powerful. Rather than, honestly, if it was on iTunes or Amazon, I could put it up there tomorrow, 10 people will watch it and it's over and I make $10. Yeah. So it's a combination of activism, storytelling, business savvy, and third time around, I feel like I'm really going to get it right. And it's going to take a while. It's going to be slow, but those moments of change are going to be so profound. So I'm excited.
I love that too. The idea, like getting it to the people who are making game time decisions.
Yes.
HR people making in real time, making the decision as far as is what's happening in these scenarios. If they're happening again.
Right.
I mean, like you open the movie with the 911 operator.
While she's on a 911 call.
Yes, she's on a 911 call.
Worked
and
there
she gets
10
groped.
years, best in the biz. Yeah.
And then they find out legally that does not pass the legal standard of sexual harassment. In California.
A very liberal state.
Reaching under a shirt.
Yes.
And then they got the law changed.
Yes.
And you cover that beautifully in the film. And so like that's one of those big wins.
But her entire life was changed by this one moment. She spoke up immediately. That's the other part of this film that I feel like it's not like a big advertisement for speaking up, by the way. Right. Because that's not always the right thing to do for you. Like it might threaten your economic livelihood. You might face retaliation. Like this is not a film where an HR rep would watch it and be like, oh no, 10,000 people are going to come to my desk tomorrow and say they've been harassed. Because maybe that's not the best thing. You've really got to think through the steps based on what state you live in, based on the laws. It's complex.
Unfortunately, the reason why people don't speak up is like what happened to these women is they spoke up and lost their job.
Yeah.
And nothing happened from it.
Lost her pension. She lost her retirement. Yeah.
And if it weren't for your documentary, how is this story even going to get projected out there again?
Well, that's the thing.
She's just living with that. No one's knowing about it.
I mean, that's what keeps me up at night is when I hear something like this and I'm like, well, here we go.
How long did it take you to make the movie?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yes.
Is that how does that compare to your other two?
Slightly longer. This journey really sat alongside my journey to becoming a mother.
Right.
Which has been really difficult, but also essential, I think, to my health, mental health. I started when I was 6 months pregnant, and I was standing outside my apartment building with my husband, Ryan, and our neighbor came up to us, this guy, like straight, cisgender, white guy that we liked, that was like our friend. And he just comes up to us and very innocently was like, oh, hey, congrats on the baby. Like, do you know what you're having? And we were like, no, but we're hoping to have a girl, but like, we don't know yet. And without skipping a fucking beat, this guy goes, it's fine. If you find out you're having a daughter, it's cool. You just have to realize that someday someone's going to fuck your daughter. And then it's all good. Like, that was the thing that this guy felt
and then he walked away?
And we were just like, I'm sorry, what does that? I froze. I was so upset.
What a wild thing to say.
It was crazy. And so we go inside and like talked about it ad nauseum. And then I realized what was so upsetting about that wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, it's cool, your daughter's going to have sex someday. Because yeah, of course she will.
Right.
It was that it was going to happen to her.
Yeah, and there's a sense of ownership of whoever mystery man was.
Right, that she'd have no agency in the matter.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing this person thought to say about a female who wasn't even born yet it just said so much. And we're in California, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to think that those people are over there. I think that was such a moment for me because I was like, oh, no, they're not like over there. They're right here. They're me. They're you. They're everyone. We all grew up in the same stew. Yeah. And we have to unpack all of this. And so, you know, I don't fault him for saying that. It was just such a reflection of our culture. Like, what has he been taught, you know, to think of women? This is like a guy that's married, like lovely. Like, we really liked him.
Yeah.
I can't stress that enough. He was like a totally normal seeming guy.
And in a way is very normal.
Totally. And so I think that moment just really kind of messed with me. And then when we opened the envelope a few days later and found out that she was to be a girl, it just like stripped all the joy from that moment for me. Jesus. What should have been such an amazing moment for me specifically, because my work is so dedicated to the equality of women. And, you know, I was happy, but I just felt like such a weight.
Yeah.
Such a weight on my shoulders. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now to make the world any tiny bit safer for her to exist in? Because this is what we're going to face all the time in various forms from men and women. And so I just started doing research and picked up the camera and got to work and set up like 16 interviews in LA and San Francisco. And it just so happened that my first shoot day was October 4th, 2017. And the Weinstein story broke October 5th. So just crazy.
Some signs there.
Crazy timing. And in fact, our premiere was less than a month ago and the verdict was announced like a few days later. Yeah. So it's really been bookended by Weinstein, even though the film's really not about him at all.
Yeah.
It's just obviously a huge kind of watershed moment in our country's history. So I did a Kickstarter campaign and I was 3 months postpartum when I did that. So I was like breastfeeding and tweeting and posting like all at the same time, totally on my own for the campaign. And people are always like, why would you, that's crazy. Why are you, running Kickstarter when you're, a new mom? And truthfully, like, I don't know if I could have gotten through that time without this project, which sounds nuts. But to me, it was just essential to my mental health to have something to anchor me in an otherwise incredibly confusing, identity shifting moment in my life where I didn't recognize any part of myself, my body, my mind, my spirit. All of a sudden I'm a mother. What? So to have that filmmaker part of my identity still so present daily, and I could kind of pick up the project and put it down as needed, I'm just so grateful for that. I'm grateful that I powered through to keep the project going and not just been like, oh, I'll do that some other time, because I maybe never would have. And rightfully so, by the way. Motherhood is just all consuming.
Yeah. My girlfriend Allie talks about this. I forget where the idea comes from exactly, but we've talked about this before, where it's some of the deep-seated, rooted anger, centuries and centuries and generations from men towards women about the power structure is about men seeing what women can do and being jealous of it and being and feeling less powerful because we do not create and continue in the same way that women do.
Wow. Never thought about it that way.
Like human beings, only half of us
only one
gets
way
to keep it going.
Yeah.
And
yet
at
we're
an animal
so
level,
undervalued.
Yes.
Every step of the way.
Right. At an
So
animal level, that
undervalued.
only one of the two can keep it going, can put out another
Interesting.
Human.
Yeah.
And so it is just like at our basic level, that just is more powerful than a man.
And yet we don't value it that way at all.
The complete opposite.
Yeah.
But because of that, I don't know.
I like that.
It's
Let's pretend that's
I like
true.
to look macro as much as possible because
that's cool.
It's easy to forget about where we come from and where all this comes from. And
God.
And how maybe
as soon
things
as you
were
have a baby,
different.
you're like, oh, everyone was a baby. And it just blows your mind.
Everyone was a baby. and your daughter is not just your daughter. She is part of a bloodline that runs.
That is true. It's very emotional.
Hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah,
Good job.
it's
Pretty
profound.
cool. When you watch your daughter play and you watch her learn new things, how does it make you feel?
Oh my gosh. Well, just 2 days ago or something, she picked up our GoPro. She's 2. She picked up the GoPro and I said, Bryce, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm making movies. And I just like lost my mind. It was so cool because not only obviously that's adorable, but she like connected that the camera is connected to making movies. And that's a step further. And that was so cool. And like the fact that she's seen me use the camera so much, and it just really felt like, oh, we are making an impact on her. Like we are imprinting knowledge into this human. And so that was amazing. And, you know, it's a roller coaster 10 minutes before she's like screaming in my face and like won't let me change her diaper. So it's really hard.
It's like in your face, like antagonistically, I'm screaming in your face.
Oh,
Is that
like
what you mean by that?
I want a snack, or I'm not doing what she needs me to do, so she will melt and cry.
How do you handle that situation?
I mean,
let's give us a little parenting
It
advice.
is so
2 years in.
hard.
Well, it's arguably the coolest. I think some people would probably, some people maybe don't agree with that if they're like not interested in kids, but and I say that because it's not, you know, it's like the thing, having a little version of you and all that stuff. And that's what I thought being a parent was before. Yeah. But what I've realized, and still don't have a kid, but what I've realized is the biggest thing is you're giving the greatest gift possible. The reason you're you and here and can talk and can do all this stuff is because somebody gave you the gift.
Yeah, it's true.
And you gave the best gift.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's pretty fucking cool.
It's really fucking cool. I think it's been a slow burn for me. Like I was not one of those moms that holds the baby and is like, my heart's beating outside of my body. Right. Like, no. I felt very like I'm responsible for this. Like this is my person. Like I'm going to step up to the plate. But I didn't feel this like gush of love. I think that's come over time. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I think it's like really toxic for moms to all perpetuate this idea that as soon as the baby comes out, you're just like totally in love. And that does happen. But for me, it was like, I feel like my producer mode kicked in. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take this hour by hour. Let's figure this out. Right. What's the schedule? You know,
exactly.
What are we doing here? But then as she started
Day's
to like
not shot.
smile,
This is not going to ruin our day.
We're losing life.
We're going to get our day.
Yes, exactly. So that served me well. But I think over time, you know, when they start to laugh and smile and crawl and stand and walk, you're just like, oh, wow, this is a human person. And we all started this way. And she's going to learn from us. And then she's going to teach us both, you know, throughout our lives. And that's just such a privilege and a pleasure and like so exciting. I just had no idea what this would feel like. And I feel like some moments with her as a 2-year-old, I'm just like, oh, we're really getting to the good part. And she's only 2. So that feels, and time just has changed all meaning. Time is so elastic. Like I saw that my friend sent me a picture of us holding her when she was like 2 weeks old. And that feels like it was equally yesterday and also a lifetime ago. I mean, literally it was, but it feels like, you know, 10 years ago and yesterday all at the same time. So the spectrum and elasticity of time has just changed so profoundly too. Yeah. And like all of my life is now measured like before I had a kid and after. Yeah. So it's crazy.
And speaking of time a little bit, as far as like, we're going to jump ahead a little bit here.
Let's do it.
Because clearly the key to the success of your message, the message that I've been working on, all of this movement, the key to it is education. Really educating youth, because that's when they're developing most of their stronger opinions and beliefs. Let's say Bryce is 15. What do you say to her about relationships with men or women? What do you say to her about sex and about consent? Yeah.
It's so exciting. Like just to think, I'm like, what would she look like? What would she even talk like? Yeah, I hope to be. I mean, it's like, it's funny, right? How you hope to be as a parent and then how you actually are pretty different. Yeah. But I hope to just be someone she feels like she can talk to. And I don't mean like her best friend. Like that's okay if at that age she kind of is in her angsty phase like we all were.
Yeah, healthy. That's healthy.
That's fine if she doesn't want to talk to me. But I just hope that, you know, as things come up in her life at that age, that she'll not feel like I would judge her too hard, or that I would be an advocate for her no matter what. It would just break my heart if she thought she couldn't talk to me about something, like whether it was about having sex or anything that comes up. I just think about myself at that age and how I was going through some pretty intense stuff with friends, you know, what friends were going through, what I was going through. And discovering your sexuality and adolescence. It's just, there's so much happening. And I think about all that my parents didn't know that was going on. So I hope there's a closeness. I hope she can talk to her dad about that as well. And I think Ryan is so open and easygoing. Like, I think of dads of the past are sort of very closed off about sex. Like, I never talked to my parents about sex. And I hope that for Bryce and this next generation, like, there's more of an open communication, because she's going to face things that I never faced, with social media at that age and the, ever presence of porn. And like, there's just so much more that she's going to go through that I won't have experience with in the same way.
Which is wild, looking at the stats just on porn specifically. Apparently, teenage girls watch it more than teenage boys as education.
Right. Yeah. Have you heard of Peggy Orenstein and all that? Yeah. So her book, Boys and Sex, and then also Girls and Sex. Yeah. It's interesting. She said that when girls are watching porn, though, they tend to watch it as like a manual of what to do to create desire from men, whereas boys are watching it for like how to be pleasured. So like it starts even there of how, the male gaze and how it's more of like a voyeuristic view. And there's no of their sexuality.
It's all about men dominating women, and there's no female pleasure at all. Yeah. And just I want to pause for a second and say Boys and Sex, I think, is literally a Bible for this work. At least for me. Yeah. That book is the basis of my strongest beliefs.
Yeah. I hope you can interview her.
Fucking read that. Yeah. And if anybody knows her, direct her to me, please. I have a lot to talk to her about.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are just so, every time I think about digging into some of these things or even having conversations as kind of attacking these subjects as we are, I rewind back to me maybe 4 or 5 years ago and think about how I would just turn this shit off immediately and be like, this is too much.
Really?
This is too much. I think a lot of men feel like this is too much.
Really?
And even and going after porn seems like a last stand. Porn's not hurting anybody. I'm not molesting anyone. I'm not abusing anyone. This is just me. This is just me, and I'm lonely, or I don't have easy for you to say, Brad, you're in a loving relationship, like all of these things. But and porn was a really tough one that I had several conversations with Allie about.
Really?
When she kind of opened up the door to me, where it was like, hey, it's unhealthy. And it's hard to hear that.
What aspect of it?
Oh, what aspects of it? I mean, because
like the volume or the type or what? Like,
what was unhealthy? The volume and just using it as a tool to replace intimacy.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because it does separate you from the human aspect.
Sure.
And give you fantasies that are not realistic.
Yeah.
And makes sex. I read this book called Slow Sex, which is about orgasmic meditation, which is very, very interesting subject. But she talks about how there should be different colors to sex. And porn only gives you red.
Sure.
And there is such a spectrum of colors that sex can be. And if you only watch porn as a model, sex can only be red hot, and that's it. Interesting. And so...
And how unhealthy that can be when you actually have intimacy in your life.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's... So, but anyways, to get back to what we were saying, would there be a main point to your discussion with Bryce to bring it back there? Because like Peggy says, it's about coaches and teachers and parents talking about this in the last chapter.
And I'm learning so much and I will continue to learn until she becomes 15, I hope. I would just want her to feel like she's in charge of her own sexuality and that her pleasure matters and her feelings matter and that she doesn't need to do things to please others that she's not comfortable with. Just feeling that agency that I think so many teenagers don't have.
Yeah.
Would be a powerful sentiment to impress upon a 15-year-old girl, mine or otherwise. I think that's something I'd never had and none of my friends had. It just felt like this is what you do to please a guy. You know, it just felt like everything was centered around the guy. And what a simple and yet profound shift for a 15-year-old girl to feel like, well, what do I want? And, you know, hopefully impressing upon her that, you know, not to be afraid of these categories, these labels of like prude or slut, you know, these like absolutes that girls fall into. Not to be so concerned about the first time, you know, the whole virgin part of this. And it might not be that great or special, and that's okay. And if it is, great. But there will be many other opportunities, or you're in charge, you know, of what that experience is like. It's not happening to you, it's happening with you. Yeah. And not judging her no matter what. I mean, it's going to be really hard, but trying not to, you know, pass any judgment on at what age she decides to have sex. That's really hard.
Right. Because, you don't want to project too much on it, because that's you're fighting.
That's not fair. Yeah. Like, I'm looking back on her age with a different lens. Like, when I was that age, you know, you feel like you're an adult, you feel like you're mature, you feel like you can handle it, you feel like you're ready. So who would I be to say like you're not ready? Yeah. So I think that'll be a lot to untangle. I think as a woman, you can't help but think about your own experiences when you're talking with your daughter. And I don't want to fall into that trap of being like, here's the pain that I felt. Don't feel that same pain, although that pain defines you and helps you. So
you're just passing the pain down.
Yes. But also, of course, just making sure she's safe and like being the kind of mom that she could talk to about birth control and without shame, you know, not giving her the shame that we don't mean to give to our kids, but we do. And I want Ryan to be a huge part of that. I just want it to be like a team. Like she could come talk to both of us about different things, maybe, or that it's like, and I don't mean to be like, and we're the cool parents, like, and we're your friends. Like, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
But to be like, to not judge her experiences, but just sort of be open and hope that she'll come to us when she needs us, or when things go wrong. I just know so many moments where I was hiding something and my parents just must have had no idea. Like, so much of us have this whole ocean of experiences going on underneath the surface, and your parents, your friends even, like, just have no clue.
Well, they got so much going on.
It's so much.
They gotta work.
Yeah,
and
that too.
Take you to practice.
They're busy. Yeah.
It's like
exactly.
they got
provide for you.
Yeah. So it is finding the time for those moments of like, of heart to hearts and all that.
Yeah.
Which is like, I don't know how much of that I had enough.
Celebrating her independence and just asking her questions. Like, I really want to learn from her, like really appreciate the differences in our generations. And, you know, you and I didn't grow up with the internet in the same way that our kids will. I mean, we got a computer, I think, in the year 2000. So I was like in beginning of high school, and AIM, and all that, you know, it was massive. Pagers. And then I think I got a cell phone when I was a sophomore in high school. My friend had a pager, and then she got a cell phone. So she gave me her pager because they had like prepaid for it. So I like got a hand-me-down pager, which I barely used. And then I got a cell phone after begging my parents, I think when I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah. And then Facebook came when we were freshmen. You remember that? Yeah. Or I was freshman.
It was
when you
year.
came in, it was already there. Yeah. Crazy.
The beginning of
That's crazy. Of the end. Yeah. So I like that we're born in this generation where technology has evolved, where we can really say before and after. Whereas
there is only after now.
Yeah. But I'm certainly very aware around Bryce. Like, I don't like that I'm on my phone all the time, but like your phone is just the epicenter of even controlling the music, like of the television, like the camera. I want to take a picture for her. Like, my phone is always nearby, and I know that's having an impact on her, and I don't like it. You know, I want to just be able to put it down and be away from it, but it's such a daily part of our lives. It's hard to separate. And she sees that. Like, she's like, "Mommy phone." And I'm like, "Oh God."
Yeah. How?
It's hard.
This seems like maybe one of the biggest mountains to climb as a parent right now. What are you doing about it? Do you have plans to maneuver this situation, or is it just sometimes too much? Like, how does it feel? Is it overwhelming?
Definitely. I mean, we don't really have her on screens a lot yet. We watch television together, but it's like Sesame Street, and she's really learning from it. She like can count to 10, and Sesame Street's
incredible.
The best. I'm tired of watching it, but it's the best.
Do you do Mr. Rogers? Do you do Mr. Rogers?
No, but we should. We watched Magic School Bus. They revamped it with Kate McKinnon.
Oh, right.
It's so great.
That's right.
So we pretty much go between Magic School Bus and Sesame Street. So she's not like on an iPad. I mean, it's all screens, but it feels like the TV is at least a little bit more social.
Yeah.
Whereas an iPad or a phone, I see other 2-year-olds at the park with their parents, like very much just on an iPad. So we try
for their necks. Just a
I
little
know.
thing.
I'm always just like, ugh.
It's like getting them started that long.
It's so
the
true.
bump. We all are getting it now.
Yeah.
But our human postures are changing.
Yes.
And so it's just that's this thing, the phones, the screens, the power that we give it.
Yeah.
I'm worried about it for me.
Yes.
And I'm fucking addicted.
Totally.
So it's like, and I'm addicted to a level that like I talk about it all the time and I'm still addicted. I have practices.
Yeah.
And I'm still addicted.
Wow.
Really badly.
I read this great article saying like, we're not so much worried about kids growing up with the technology as we are the parents, because it's called like continuous partial parenting. And I feel this every day where you're on your phone and you're parenting. Yeah. And so you're going to miss stuff. They're going to get hurt. Like just things are going to happen because you're not fully paying attention.
Yeah.
And that's a battle. Like I find myself doing that and I'm just like, I can do this later. Yeah. Like she's going to nap at some point. I can handle this later. So I'm doing a little better, I'd say, at like, I'll like see these emails come through and I'm just like, Sarah, you're with your kid. Like I try. And it's really nice that a child can sometimes refocus you. Like if she's laughing or running or having fun, like jumping in a puddle, like doing something awesome and so kid wonder like, you just want to soak it in. Like she's not always going to be like that. She's going to be sucked into her phone soon enough, So I just really want to appreciate and be present with those moments. And it is a battle every single day. But I love that she reminds me to kind of just like enjoy life that's happening right in front of your face rather than the screen right in front of your face where you're looking at other people's lives. So it's just like, I've got this wonderful child in front of me and I want to enjoy it and be present. So that's a constant negotiation that Ryan and I both face. Like, and by the way, you're like very judgmental of the other person. You're like, get off your phone. Course. And then she's being so cute.
But then you're
like, but take a picture. Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, so, we're all hypocrites.
We're all just doing our best every day.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
What, you said it before that telling these stories of people who deserve to have their story told, but what do you think your biggest gift is? Why do you think you're here?
Wow. I think I'm still figuring that out, but I've got a pretty good read on my gift of creating a story from start to finish. Like I really love that I can have an idea, even a seed of an idea for a documentary and see it through all the way. It's for 2 years plus, at least that's been my pattern, from, how am I going to raise the money? Who's going to support this? To what lens should I use? What questions should I ask? How is it going to be edited together? What music, what color, like all of that. Mm-hmm. I can really see through the trees of like the larger vision and yet come up with actionable steps every single day to move it forward. So my brain works well with like big picture and also day-to-day tasks and not getting too bogged down with either. And I just love that my ability to be like, all right, what are my steps forward today? And by the way, that could mean watching other people's films on Netflix. It could mean taking a walk. It doesn't always mean like sitting at the computer and like doing hard work. It just means letting the idea breathe and let it develop. And sometimes you make great strides and you get a grant or you do an amazing interview or you make a breakthrough in edit. And other days it feels like everything's going wrong. So I'm just grateful for my determination and perseverance to see through an idea from start to finish and really build a strategy around that for who might want to watch it and how to impact that person. And then to listen, like I think I just recently, Peggy Ornstein said, sometimes you write a book and then you find out what it was about.
Right.
And I think that's kind of true with films too. Like you think you're making a film about this, and then once people watch it, you realize once it's reflected back to you that it's really about something else. Uh-huh. So now I'm kind of in this exciting phase with Nevertheless, where I'm ready to listen and see how other people interpret these stories, this information, and use it So long story short, I don't know. I think my gift is like having a brain that's business and art in one.
Yeah. The producer brain. Kinda.
Yeah. The producer, director, like
the architect and the engineer, as they say. Yeah.
Both of them. Yeah. And holding true to my North Star of what success looks like for me. Like, I really think that was a big shift for me, is not getting too caught up in like, I might not ever win an Oscar someday. And that's okay. Like, that would be great, but it just might not be my path. And now that I see what it actually takes to get to an Oscar and all the money and the politics, like things like that, I'm just like all right. Like, especially as a woman in the film industry, you often feel like, oh, this system wasn't built for me. Okay, I'm going to build my own system. Mm-hmm. And I tell that to young filmmakers, female filmmakers specifically, because you hit a wall and you think, oh, this isn't meant for me at all. Like, nobody has looked out for my best interest. This isn't designed for women to succeed in so many ways. But I still want to be here. I still earned my spot to be in this business. Yeah. So I better create my own path. And if that happens to intersect with like a conventionally successful path at some point, amazing. But like, I got a Netflix deal. Like, people by all accounts think that is very successful, and it is. It is. But I'm also going to keep doing the work that means the most to me in the way that I think it should be seen and felt and heard. So yeah, I don't know. Every day I'm figuring it out, but I feel really grateful to be a filmmaker that's making money from my art and also making change. And that's rare. So I'll take it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have earned it. I mean, like I said at the beginning, you are making your dreams come true in a way that's so tangible. And I see it every day, and it's like, it inspires me.
Thank you.
It really does inspire me.
Yeah.
Sarah,
how are you?
What?
So are you.
Good. Well, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I am so grateful you are my friend.